BUC training. My role today is to talk about how do you get a story published in the local newspaper. Victor Hulbert, in his training about photography, has gone through how you use your photographs and make sure they're the right size and have the right content. As they say, every picture tells a story, and that is the point, trying to get a story published into your local newspaper. It's no point trying to just say, Mr. Smith preached on this subject and Mrs. Smith announced a really nice hymn and we enjoyed ourselves at church. No newspaper is going to print that. They do need to hear a story. But what is a story? Over the years, myself and Victor Hulbert have used in our training the whole picture of truth. Topical, relevant, unusual, trouble, or human interest. It's that kind of story that we need to get across to a newspaper. We should be looking at the events that we cover and present them in such a way that when we talk to a newspaper, we can be addressing the idea of topical. What is a topical story? It's something that's really relevant. In my writing this week, we've just been hearing on the news about people who've been introducing, a little bit too much horse meat into beef burgers. And so in my communicator, in my writing, I've made a reference to that. It's very topical. People are going to say, oh, I remember that. Something has to be relevant. News is all about helping people to make sense of the society that they live in. There's no point in talking about something that is totally irrelevant. People aren't interested in, they may be interested in 666, but the majority of people, they want to hear about something that relates to their everyday life. It also has a further relevance in the way that we present a story. If we're writing up a great event that has taken place in church over the weekend, there's no point trying to present it to the local editor and presenting it 2 or 3 weeks later. Relevant means presenting it on time. Unusual. An unusual story is something that really strikes home with people. So Mrs. Smith, who has lived to the age of 100 and is just thinking about doing a 5-kilometre walk to raise sponsorship for the development charity ADRA, that's going to get in the paper. That's really unusual, particularly if she can turn around and say, yes, and I've lived to this age and I'm really fit and healthy because of my good vegetarian lifestyle and the way that I live my life. It's an unusual story. People will print that. Trouble is another story driver for newspapers. This is a real incident that happened. The small church had hired a small portable baptistry. They wanted to baptise somebody in their local church. Everything was set up, the water was in the pool, just the right temperature. The pastor and the candidate were in the pool. The pastor was just raising his arms to say unfortunately, the screws holding the baptistry together were slightly corroded and they snapped, they broke. And once there was a pastor standing in a pool of water, and the next moment, the pool of water was spread out throughout the whole church, and it needed the fire brigade to pump it out. That's trouble. That's the kind of trouble that a newspaper reporter is going to say, that's a good one. Human interest. We do need to be talking about human interest stories. People are interested in people. They don't want to hear about facts and figures. They want to hear about, not just that there was an ADRA fun run in Leeds round Hay Park. They want to hear about the runner who came first and has come from the island of Montserrat, and they hear his human interest story. Okay, that's the way that it goes. So you present a story. How do you do it? That often is the fear. But they're not going to take my story. They're not interested in religious things. These days, newspapers are not interested in printing sermons. It just wouldn't go down. 1800s, fine. 1930s. Fine, they'd do it. But not now. You do need a little bit more. But they do need your stories. I have a reporter friend in the north of England. Her name is Sarah. And she tells me, we're always looking for news. We want your news. It's not that they're trying to filter you out. They want you included. So how do you do it? I was the pastor in the Corby Church, and as is my wont, I like doing things for young people. And we have this idea of, let's have Dinosaur Day at church. Now, that's a human interest story. It's an unusual story. It's pretty relevant. Children hear about dinosaurs, they hear about fossils, and they hear the creationist side of how this world came about. It's great, very interactive. But we wanted to get that into the local paper because it is the good story. So we went round to the local paper. But after we'd read the paper and found, I like the style of that writer's work. So when we went to the paper, we asked for the reporter by name. We got to know the reporter, handed in our business card and said, look, we've got this event coming up. Can you provide a photographer? Can you provide a reporter? And she said, well, actually, no, we can't, because it's Saturday that you're doing it. They're away for the big football game. So can you do something? Well, as it turns out, yes, we could. We provided good photography. We provided a good report, a proper written report, and then we presented it. But rather than just leave the reporter alone and say, right, next time we'll go for somebody else, we nurtured our relationship with that reporter. Judy Hamilton Johansson is a communications secretary up in the north of England, in the Middlesbrough Church actually. And she's followed my example. She's got to know a reporter and she's nurtured that reporter. She's stayed close. And so, well, she's really developed a relationship with the reporter. Articles get sent in, ideas get sent in. When Judy's in town, she'll often pop in and say, hello. And, well, you never know. She has this word, bribery. She bribes her reporter. It's not really that. She is developing a relationship. There may be the odd bottle of Schlur at Christmas. There may be a small present. But what the reporter really wants and what the reporter gets is lots and lots of stories. Judy knows that not everything will be printed. But the reporter now knows that Judy is interested in communications and is well able to know what's going on in her area. And so now it's reached the point where the reporter rings Judy up. What's going on in the Christian world? And Judy is well able to reply. That's nurturing a reporter. It really helps. But you may find yourself in the position where you think, I can't write, I'm useless at writing. I don't know why the church has invited me to be the communications secretary. Well, there's probably a really good reason. You are recognised as being a good communicator. You may not be a good writer, but you may be a good communicator. Years ago, in the Northwest, there was one particular communications secretary who was excellent, always getting things in the local paper. But she would admit it herself. I'm really not a good writer. She had developed a relationship with the reporter. She'd just ring the reporter up and tell the person what had happened. Her daughter, 12 years old, used to write down just little fragments, bullet points of what had gone on in the service. And the reporter, because that's the reporter's job, turned the bullet points and the interview over the phone into good, accurate stories. As Christians, we can share an awful lot of good. The stories that we can get into the local paper, they may not tell people about the Sabbath or why we're saved or how to be saved, but they present the name Seventh-day Adventist. It's really important people see the name, say it, and become familiar with the name. But there is something else that happens. When you present reports about ordinary events done by ordinary people in an ordinary church in a town in the north or in the south, people are realising, oh, those Seventh-day Adventists are all right. They're sensible people. They understand what's going on in the world. And you never know that when a friend invites them to the Seventh-day Adventist Church for a particular event, they may say, yeah, I'll go there. They're sensible people. They're normal people. It is easy to get stories into the local paper. It adds interest to your life. It may help people to understand this world just that little bit better.